IG, Australia's #1 forex provider.
Welcome back. It is a conflict which has proved intractable. Once again, there are hopes that talks between Israelis and Palestinians will yield results. The Palestinian leadership says it is committed to seeing through the 9 months of negotiations. Yet, to be fair, hopes of a breakthrough are not high. On the one hand, Israel is criticised for not committing to the process and continuing to build settlements. Palestinians are singled out for not being a true partner for peace. Ofir Gendelman is an Israeli diplomat and current spokesperson to the Arabic media in the Israel Prime Minister's office. He joins me now. Nice to have you here on the program. The talks now, we heard from the Palestinians, Mahmoud Abbas, saying that they are committed to seeing through the 9 months of negotiations. Are you optimistic?
We are hopeful that the Palestinians will finally recognize us. The whole issue is not about settlements. It's about recognition. It's about mutual recognition. And my Prime Minister...
There has been recognition of the state of Israel. What you're talking about is recognition of Israel as a Jewish state?
Exactly. We are required, we are asked by the Palestinians to acknowledge and recognize their right for their own nation state, a Palestinian state for the Palestinian people. We ask them to do the same. They should recognize Israel as the homeland of the Jewish people. This has been the reason for the conflict that has been raging on for over a century. So without that recognition, without that simple thing, a simple gesture of mutual recognition, it will be very difficult to reach true peace.
They would also say that there's not adequate recognition, while there is nominal recognition of a two-state solution and trying to move towards a two-state solution. Effectively, you're talking about a Palestinian state that would not be a contiguous state. You wouldn't be able to drive from one end to the other without passing through parts of Israel because of the establishment of settlements. Is that not a fundamental issue that also impedes any resolution?
It is not, because the Palestinians have accepted years ago that some settlements will be next to Israel. We have Arab communities inside Israel. We are able to drive from northern Israel to the south. There is no problem. Why do the Palestinians oppose a Jewish presence or Jewish citizens of their country? What we're saying is very, very clear. Mutual recognition. The whole issue of settlements, territory-wise, is 1.6% of the entire West Bank.
Yes, but it is a fundamental issue that even the United States says is an impediment to moving forward with the negotiations.
Respectfully, we disagree. We think that, within the framework of final status negotiations, the settlements are the easiest issue to resolve. And the Palestinians themselves have acknowledged, have agreed years ago, that these areas will be inside Israel. So what's the problem?
One of the problems has been the continued building of settlements, which the timing of that, particularly when you're trying to restart negotiations, again, doesn't help in trying to move it forward.
Let me put things in context. We're not building new settlements. We are building new neighborhoods.
Extending neighborhoods in existing settlements.
Yes, but where are we building? We are building in areas that will be inside Israel in any given peace agreement with the Palestinians. The Palestinians themselves has agreed to it. So what the Palestinians are doing, they're trying to find a pretext to explode negotiations, to make negotiations come to a standstill. What we need is Palestinian commitment to reach true peace with Israel. Look, we have many issues with the Palestinians. Abu Mazen, the Palestinian president, does not control half of its territory. He does not control the Gaza Strip, which is ruled by force by Hamas since 2006. He can't even go there because of fear that he will be assassinated by Hamas. Yet, we negotiate with him, although he does not represent the entire Palestinian people.
This is always a criticism, isn't it, that as there is criticism of Israel for developing settlements, there's also criticism of the Palestinians for not having a clear, credible leadership and not being a partner for peace. Do you believe that the Palestinians are a partner for peace, that there is sincerity from Mahmoud Abbas at least?
We hope so. Up until now, we have been negotiating them for 20 years, but actually, the talks have not been going on for 20 years. We have been talking for 2 months, 3 months. The Palestinians have been exploding those negotiations. We haven't been talking to them for 4 years until they finally came back after there was a huge international pressure on them to revamp negotiations. What they need is to say to us, we recognize your right to have a country on your ancestral homeland. We recognize that you are here. We are ready to make an historic compromise for peace. We are ready to do it. My Prime Minister is willing to do the extra mile, to make concessions, painful concessions for peace. The Palestinians must do the same.
Is there also a recognition from Israelis that the reason that there is a commitment to a two-state solution is that ultimately, if you don't resolve the issue in that way, then the state of Israel as a Jewish state will no longer exist because of the demography of the region?
I respectfully disagree. It's not a matter of demography. It's a matter of wanting to end the conflict, and we're willing to do so. It's not about the future of the Jewish state. The Jewish state will remain no matter what.
But you could have a Jewish state that is seen, as South Africa had been seen in the past, as a pariah state by not having full citizenship rights to a vast proportion of its population.
I hear this a lot, but it really has no bearing on reality. Anyone who knows anything about apartheid knows that this is not the case in Israel. In South Africa, blacks were not allowed to serve in government. They were not allowed to serve in parliament, in the military, in the judiciary. In Israel, we have an Arab who is a Supreme Court judge. We have Arab-Israeli ambassadors. We have Arab-Israeli ministers and members of parliament. The deputy speaker of the House is an Israeli Arab. So once we hear those allegations, we know that it's basically not true. What we want is peace. We want true peace. We want a peace that would last. This peace relies on two separate principles. One is mutual recognition. The other is security.
There are such fundamental divisions, aren't there? Questions about the right of return for Palestinians to their old homes. The border question, which we've discussed. The control of the holy sites. Who has control of Jerusalem as a capital? Is it a shared capital? Are these ultimately insurmountable obstacles?
I don't think so, because there is a solution to any problem.
Would you be prepared to share Jerusalem as a capital?
Jerusalem will not be divided again, and I'll tell you why. Because if you look at the history of Jerusalem, which spans over 3,500 years, it was divided only once for 19 years when it was under Jordanian control, from 1948 to 1967. I don't know any country that would divide its capital. We're willing to find a solution to the issue of Jerusalem, but our capital will not be divided again.
So if the solution for the Palestinians is that they can't have a capital in
Of course
Jerusalem?
they can. Of course they can have a capital, but they cannot have a capital. They cannot have a capital where the current municipal borders are. There is a solution, but to think that we will give our holiest site, religious site, to somebody else is really, I'm afraid, unthinkable.
And the control again of the holy sites. If the Palestinians, if they're not going to have control, would that also not mean that you can't breach this divide? These are very fundamental questions, aren't they? Before you even get to talking about a proper resolution, if you can't get beyond that, where do the negotiations go?
Well, frankly, there is freedom of religion in Jerusalem, and Muslims go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque freely. Every day Muslims from all over the world come and make pilgrimage in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. There are no limitations whatsoever. Everyone is free to worship God in Jerusalem, whether he's Jewish, Muslim, or Christian. The idea is to find the best solution for the two peoples to live together. And we feel that if the Palestinians will finally recognize that they too need to make an effort for peace, they too have to make concessions, they too have to make tough decisions in order to end this. Once they do come to this threshold, to this phase, then we will have peace.
How much of a factor now is the instability that we see throughout the rest of the region, particularly in Syria, that Israel has enjoyed a status quo with, has enjoyed reasonable relations with? Egypt, of course, which we have maintained a peace treaty. Are you concerned about the instability in those countries? What happens if the Assad regime is overthrown? What happens if the military remains in control in Egypt, if they don't move back on the path towards democracy?
Well, naturally, the Middle East is changing in a pace and scope that we haven't seen in 100 years. We are living in historic times in the Middle East. And countries that we thought were stable and were there for the long run are crumbling from within. And this, of course, has direct bearing on Israel. We have a very important strategic peace agreement with Egypt. This agreement stays on, regardless of the political internal turmoil in Egypt.
Does it work actually to your advantage if the Muslim Brotherhood is not in power there, if the military remains in control of the country?
I think that the most important thing is to keep the peace. We, of course, have no say of who rules Egypt. This is a domestic Egyptian issue. What's important to us is that the peace agreement, which is an anchor of stability in the region, will stay on.
And particularly when it comes to being able to influence events in Gaza, control Gaza, shut down the tunnels that have been used to move weapons back and forth. That's also imperative, isn't it, from where you stand?
Absolutely. Hamas is a threat not only to Israel but also to Egypt. Hamas has been involved in terrorist acts inside Sinai and inside Egypt. And the Egyptian military has been working in order to destroy those tunnels that have been used to smuggle weapons from Libya and elsewhere, and Iran, by the way, into the Gaza Strip. These missiles were fired later on our cities. So Hamas is in a very difficult situation now. It's a vile, vicious, and dangerous terrorist organization. And within the past year, after we completed the last operation in Gaza, the number of rockets that were fired on Israel has diminished considerably. So the security situation we have now in the south is the best that we had for a decade. The
way that you describe Hamas is certainly not the way that Palestinians in Gaza would describe Hamas.
Actually, they would.
And many of them they've won elections in Gaza, having reported out of there. I know that the work that it has done amongst the people there, education, health, housing, that Hamas was certainly seen as being much more favourable to the people of Gaza than, for instance, the Palestinian Authority.
Once again, things are more complicated on the ground. First of all, Hamas took power in Gaza by force. They kicked out the Palestinian Authority and they killed hundreds of Palestinians.
But also won elections.
They won elections before and then they made a coup. Now, they do not have legal jurisdiction, legal standing in Gaza. The Palestinian Authority has. But as I said, the Palestinian Authority has no presence in the Gaza Strip because Hamas would not allow it. As per what the Gazans think about the government, those who are affiliated with Hamas do get, of course, what they need. But those who are not affiliated with Hamas get nothing. They get nothing. Let me give you an example. Hamas has not been willing to pay for gas for the power station in Gaza. This is why there are outages in the Gaza Strip, not because Hamas doesn't have the money to pay, because it's not willing to pay. So they are using Gazans as pawns for political reasons vis-à-vis Israel and vis-à-vis Egypt.
I want to turn to the question of Iran. How concerned is Israel about a rapprochement between the United States and Iran, with the President Hassani talking to Barack Obama, efforts to try to bring an end or a negotiated end to Iran's nuclear program in return for lifting some of the sanctions? Are you concerned about Iran being brought back into the world community and brought out of the cold?
I'll tell you what we're concerned about. We're concerned about Iran having nuclear weapons. This country has been stating for 34 years, day in, day out, that it wants to destroy my country and kill my people.
Iran would say it's concerned about Israel having nuclear weapons.
I can't find one Israeli official who said anything about destroying Iran, ever. While in Iran, just 2 weeks ago, they celebrated Death to America Day, and they chanted also death to Israel.
Don't you recognise that there's a change now with President Hassani Rouhani in control there, that they've moved away from the hard-line aggression that we saw from Mahmoud Ahmadinejad?
I think that we should bear in mind that President Rouhani is not the decision maker in Iran. The decision maker is the supreme leader, as he's called, the Ayatollah Khamenei, and he calls the shots. So he decided, ultimately, that Rouhani will be president because he vetted out all the 600 other candidates. He left only 6 candidates. All of them eventually answer to him. So what we want is a good deal with Iran. Israel wants a diplomatic solution to this issue. But the deal has to be a good deal in the sense that it will dismantle completely the Iranian military nuclear program.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here in the program. Enjoy the rest of your time in Australia, your meetings as well in Canberra. Thank you
very much.
Well, a massive bomb blast has struck a Syrian government building near the capital Damascus, killing 31 people. 4 generals are believed to be among the dead. The attack comes as the government presses ahead with a major